Welcome in to my new interview series here on Twitch, where I bring you up and coming dark electronic producers from around the world. And also, today's guest is featuring Brixx, joining us from Melbourne, Australia. And we're going to talk a little bit about her EP, Conversion Therapy, which I guess has been out for a minute now, but was a really excellent release. If you missed it, you'll get to hear the whole thing today with the artist. We're going to talk a little bit about each track, and we're also going to do a track premiere of the unheard Brixx release, Trigger Identification. So that's all exciting stuff. Yeah, I'm excited to be here with Brixx today. Welcome.
Having me?
Okay, so I'm going to get us started with a little Brixx bio to give you an intro. Then we will hear from her a bit. So, Brixx is a Melbourne-based music producer, composer, and DJ influenced by cult cinema, new beat, EBM, techno, and electro. Her sound is underpinned by a darkness, her music acting as a lens through which to explore the human condition. In 2020, Brixx released music on French labels Theatre, maybe pronounced like that, and Parfait Records, including her debut Corporate Punishment, a musical collage of samples, spoken word, and synthesizers. Her most recent release, Conversion Therapy, came out on vinyl through Heavy Machinery Records in October 2021. Conversion therapy is inspired by the gamut of emotions and subsequent journey leading up to and following the coming out process. Oh, cat interruption. The EP draws on the artist's love of David Lynch, cult queer cinema classics, and film composers such as Heather's David Newman. It's a mental trip encompassing repressed desire, friv- frivolity, uh, transformation, and ultimately acceptance. A late night soundtrack which drops you into a world tinged with darkness that encompasses techno, new beat, EBM, and breaks. Um, okay. Beans knows where it's at tonight, and that is with this interview with Brixx. All right. Whoop, welcome in. Um, so you're from Australia. What is the music scene like there?
It's a small dark dance music scene, I suppose. Like there's where I am in Melbourne, there's quite a big music scene in general. Like it's probably the best place for music and live music in Australia. But yeah, the dark dance community is quite small, and I've sort of only really gotten into it in the last 5 or 6 years. And I suppose predominantly for that time I've been, I guess, writing a lot of music, so I haven't really been as engaged in it, but it's definitely there and it's getting bigger, I would say. So yeah.
Do you have any current regular places where you play or like residencies or anything?
No residencies. I've had a I mean COVID sort of derailed everything because I don't know if you guys know the situation with Melbourne, like had the longest lockdown in the world, so that was just crazy. Things are starting up again a little bit now. Like I've got sort of DJ gigs coming up here and there, but I think also because of COVID, like I've gone sort of turned into like even more of an introvert. So I want to do some DJing, but I'm probably not the kind of person that's going to be out playing every weekend. I'd probably rather be like writing new material, but I'll just see how it goes. Like coming out of COVID has been pretty crazy. So we might become a little bit more social in the next few months, but yeah, we'll see.
Yeah, I did hear a little bit about Melbourne, and yeah, I saw that there were a lot of people on Twitch still that were like in lockdown. Um, it was also rather long here. I think the clubs reopened in July, but still after most places, and then have been like restricted in various ways since then. But yeah, things are starting to get a little bit back to normal now. Uh, yeah, hopefully another variant doesn't come along Definitely don't need
Yeah.
any more of that energy.
No, totally. I think dance floors, I think they're at full capacity again now, just as of last weekend. So, got a gig coming up in about a month, and was working towards a live show that was supposed to be part of the conversion therapy release, but it was meant to be part of a laneway festival, and I'm not sure if that's still going ahead, just because of moving into like colder months in a few months. So I'm not sure if that'll still be part of it, but I assume I'll do a live show at some point, but yeah, I'll just have to see how that goes in putting that together. So it might be on the cards, but yeah.
Okay. So you don't have any live gigs currently planned.
Not at the
Just
moment.
got
Like I've been asked to do a few, but I've just got a few other things coming up that I sort of have to focus on first. So that's kind of there in the background, but it's not my top priority at the moment.
sure,
Yeah.
sure. It's definitely an awkward time to play live shows. Um, it's like, oh, everything is just sort of a gamble. At least here, it's like things can still get shut down for various reasons. Like people are just canceling tours and people at venues are getting COVID and having to shut down for the night. So just random stuff like that, even when like things are back up and running, still impacting things. Um, but hopefully you can get back to playing some live gigs soon. So you have actually played live shows before with Brixx, like or as Brixx, I should say.
No, no, I actually haven't. My background is I used to be in bands and I used to sort of do a bit of performance stuff where I would play live percussion, I suppose with like electronic drums and that kind of thing. But as for this Brixx project, I've not played live with this before. And I guess I wasn't ever really sure if I was going to, but because with the heavy machinery release, we had to each artist had to play a live show. So yeah, I kind of started writing this live show, and then it hasn't really gone ahead. I think I definitely will do it, but it's just for me, I never really wanted to know. I mean, I didn't know if I really wanted to be a live performer. I'm still trying to navigate that space to figure out if that's something that I want to do. But definitely, like, I've written probably 70 to 80% of the show. It's just like just practicing it and figuring it out, how to execute it, I suppose, because there's lots of different bits and pieces. And I guess it's just kind of getting that together. But I'm sure I'll do it in the future, but it never started out as something that I thought that I'd kind of embark on, I suppose. Yeah.
For sure. So how long have you been playing as Brixx?
Well, I've been doing
Or
this
just making
for,
music as it, I should say.
yeah, so probably the last 5 or 6 years. I suppose I came to electronic music like when I was first interested in it, which was a long time ago now, was minimal techno, which is kind of, I don't know, it's kind of funny to think about that now because my tastes have changed so much. And I suppose got much more into dark dance music maybe like the last 7, 8, 9, 10 years, but it just took a while for me to get to a space where I started making music because I was working full time for a long time and studying, and I just didn't really have the capacity to do it. So it's been the last 5 or 6 years that I've kind of been working on it solidly, I'd say. Yeah.
And so, how did you get started? Like, you said you were in other bands before. What other projects were you in before?
I was in a rock band, which is kind of like really wildly funny to think about that now. The kind of music that was is so different from what I'm making at the moment. And so we had like, I think 7 or 8 members in that band. It was like I got into it because a friend asked me, and it was quite a strange band. And we had two drummers. So one was like she took a holiday, and then we had like two replacement drummers. So myself and then this other person that played an acoustic drum kit, and I had an electronic drum kit. So I suppose it was through being in that band and sort of really curating sounds in a particular way on this Roland drum kit that I got quite interested in electronic music, which is quite ironic because it was actually a rock band. But I think it took that experience to make me think I don't really want to be doing this. How can I kind of use what I'm doing at the moment and use that for something else? So then after that experience, I kind of got into DJing and then started doing a little bit of production. This is probably about 10 years ago, maybe even more, but I kind of just dabbled around with it and didn't really finish stuff. Like I did little bits and pieces, and and then went off to study film music for a while. But yeah, didn't really start finishing stuff or getting seriously into it until 6 years ago. So it's been quite an interesting experience, the whole process, I think, and how it's led me now to this. So yeah.
Hello to Black Dahlia joining us in the chat, who
Hey.
also collaborated with Brixx on a track that we're going to listen to today, also from Australia. All right.
Yes, she's in Sydney.
Also worth checking out. Okay. Uh, cool. So, what would you say really inspired you to transition from more of like the rock bands to like, a solo electronic project?
Yeah, I think I always sort of liked, was never really that into rock, but I think transitioning into being like more autonomous was definitely the fact that there were 7 members in that band. And just like, as you can imagine, organizing, I mean, not that I was organizing it, it was the singer, he did a lot of the work, but just being in a band with that many people and having to rely on that many people, I was just like, I can't work this way. I just sort of want to work on my own. And then and then doing the DJing, I suppose, sort of got me out of that. So I used to do a lot of DJing. This is probably going back about 10 years now. And then, I don't know, that just kind of dropped off. I think because I just had these crazy jobs where I was working all the time and so busy, it just didn't really leave room for a lot of sort of extra bits and pieces. But yeah, it was definitely something about just having that many members together all the time that I was like, this is just too much for me. I have to work on my own. So I think, yeah.
Yeah, 7 members. What did that band sound like? That's like a prog band.
It was just like it was kind of indie rock. It was just a family friend. He was in the band and asked me, and I was like, "Why not? It sounds fun." And it was a lot of fun, but then yeah, until it kind of wasn't anymore. And I was like, "This is not for me." So, but yeah, no, it was good at the time. I think it was just good being able to sort of play live. That was probably the first times that I'd played live was in that band, and yeah, it was an interesting experience. And I think so. I have done other live shows and things, but just not like a full live electronic set of just my stuff. Yeah, so yeah, it's quite interesting. But yeah, I mean, yeah, I'll do it eventually, but just have to see when.
So, how long were you working on your own productions before you released your first EP as Bricks?
Yeah, so I was just sort of, as I said, like I didn't really finish stuff, so it was probably on and off, like just like sort of mucking around with things for like maybe 6 or 7 years. Did a little bit of composition work, like for a web series, like a queer web series. So little things like that, but not actually completing a full track. I think to me now, when I look back at the other things that I did, like the smaller sort of compositional things, even when I was studying, I think like actually completing a full track, that process beginning to end, is a lot more challenging. And I know a lot of people as well. Like they study electronic music production and they're brilliant, but they struggle to complete something. I think it's just like sometimes the psychology of actually committing to something and working on it for a long period of time. One of the tracks off Corporate Punishment, that took a year. That entire EP took 2 years. It was only 3 tracks. It just took a very long time to sort of cement, I suppose, any kind of process and just sort of figure out a way of doing things. And each time I still approach it differently now, but I just think, it just took a long time to get to that point. And I suppose, making little bits and pieces, as I said, is just completely different to committing to a whole track, I think, in my experience.
Yeah, sorry, I misspoke. The name of that EP was Corporate Punishment. The label name for at least conversion therapy was Heavy Machinery. Oops. But yeah, totally. Completing thing is a whole nother game. I'm a Gemini, so I'm all about having 100% ideas and less follow through. Um, okay, so we have a question from the chat from Creepy Culture down in Portland, which is, what are some of the artists or tracks you enjoy DJing?
Oh, that's interesting. I have to give a shout out to Black Dahlia because I like playing her stuff. Also, Andy, I play quite a lot of Andy as well. What else do I like? I like the EBM artist Unconscious. I like Schwafelgelb, the German duo. Forces, another Australian duo, Alex Ackers, who I recently worked with on some stuff. Yeah, a lot of, probably I'd have to say a lot of modern electronica. Like I mean, sort of been DJing on and off, but like a lot of my collection is kind of modern stuff. So I guess like modern new beat and EBM, and also like some electro. I really like Jensen Interceptor. Yeah, so I guess it varies, but it's usually like EBM, electro, new beat, probably I'd say. So
Yes. We have another question from chat. They're just firing them off. Have you ever played
uh,
outside Australia before?
no, actually, I haven't. It's funny. I've lived in Berlin quite a few times because my family's from over there. But when I was there, I was just doing a lot of partying and not really involved in that scene, unfortunately. So it's just, yeah, it's pretty much been here.
Well, hopefully that changes for you. So if you wanted to anyway. Uh, someone has another question. Was your shirt from QWERTY? I don't know what this is.
No, it's the Dark Entries shirt, the label.
Yes, that's
If that
that's what it looked like to
answers your
me.
question.
We have all kinds of questions from the chat today.
Oh,
Um,
okay.
all right. So, um, let's see. So who are your current favorite like old school artists that inspire you in general, or also like I guess you just talked about the new artists, but if you have anyone else you want to mention.
um, Big Ministry fan, so I suppose like a lot of earlier kind of Ministry, even their metal stuff. I know a lot of people that like the earlier stuff are not interested in their kind of like industrial sort of harder sort of speed metal kind of stuff, but I like that as well. I don't really know how it plays into what I make now, but I suppose yeah, I like listening to a lot of that sort of stuff. I don't know. I have quite a broad range of influences, and it's not all electronic. Like recently, I've been listening to Billie Eilish, and some people might judge because of that. But I just like listening to different styles of music and listening to how they're produced and put together. A lot of 80s film scores is probably what I'm listening to. Like the most at the moment is probably also what is going to influence me most moving forward for the next project. I suppose when I was growing up, it was soundtracks. So it was like, the Lost Boys and The Crow, and that probably got me into a lot of dark music at the time, like The Cure and that sort of stuff. But I think, yeah, when I think about it, like film has probably influenced me quite a lot. So yeah.
What are some soundtracks that you're really influenced by?
Yeah, so Requiem for a Dream. Here, what's his name now? Now I've totally gone blank. Clint Mansell. Yeah, he is amazing. Like that soundtrack is just, and the film. I mean, I don't know who's seen it, but like so dark and depressing. And I think it's like it's a little bit orchestral and also combined with electronica, which is what I love a lot of. Also Mulholland Drive, and some of these soundtracks they don't have that much electronica, but I think the ones that combine orchestral and electronica like are quite interesting. There's a film that I've actually been wanting to see. I haven't seen it yet. It's got Grace Jones in it. It's I think from the mid '80s called Vamp. I'm not sure if anyone's heard that or if you've seen that, but I've been listening to the soundtrack for that pretty much on repeat. I think Jonathan Elias did that. He also did a lot of kind of like psychological romantic thrillers in the mid '80s. So he did like it was a Two Moon Junction and Far From Home, which was like this weird Drew Barrymore film. It's just kind of I think like at the moment like the kinds of scores that I like this sort of kind of this crossover between this like weird electronica and action music. Like it's hard to explain, but it's when I hear it from those iconic '80s films, I kind of think I'd like to try to make something like that, but I don't know how easy that would be. So we'll have to see.
Well, I definitely hear a lot of that coming through your work, so I'd say you're doing a good job.
Oh,
But
thanks.
yeah, like that's definitely when I hear your stuff, it's like one of the main elements of the sound. Like this sounds like an 80s film soundtrack, so mission accomplished.
Thank you.
Um, yeah, do you have any like current soundtrack inspo, or is it pretty much just like 80s
A lot of
sci-fi,
it's
like
a lot of
action
it's
aesthetics?
80s. I do like what else? Like so Gaspar Noé, so he did like Irreversible Climax, Argentinian director. He has paired up quite a lot with Thomas from Daft Punk. I'm not really a Daft Punk fan, but when this guy does scores, like they're quite interesting, like quite gritty electronica, a lot of repetitive sort of stuff. Yeah, so I find that quite interesting, and that's probably a little bit more modern. The Power of the Dog, the new Jane Campion movie, so that's the guy from Radiohead. That's not electronic at all. That's sort of more, I think, sort of more classical. So yeah, there are some modern ones, but I think because I'm quite interested in sort of 80s stuff at the moment, I'm listening to more older sort of soundtracks, but definitely like open to lots of different things. So
Some things being mentioned in the chat. Cat People. That's Marauder, right? Um, The
I didn't know
Sorcerer
that.
by Tangerine Dream. Firestarter. I don't know.
Yeah, that's the
I've got to
Drew
listen to
Barrymore
some
one.
more uh, soundtracks, I guess. So you said you studied film, so this must be a pretty natural fusion for you. Are you, what are you doing with film?
Yeah, so I studied film music for a year in Sydney, which was like just this really insane experience. I was living in Berlin at the time and moved from there to study this course and had like no experience in it and like got into this course, and the people there were just like all on record labels and like working with Nick Cave, and I felt completely out of my comfort zone, and it was like quite a stressful experience. But yeah, I studied that for a year, and then I kind of had to get a job in Sydney because I wasn't like working for a while. I was just studying, and it kind of all flew out the window. So then I didn't really concentrate on it again. But getting back into it now, I'm doing some composition for some cinema commercials coming up in the next month. So that'll sort of probably be like my first commercial job with that. Definitely just looking to get back into it, I think, through student films will probably be the easiest way, because I guess, yeah, if you don't have a lot of experience doing it, like although I've studied it and I have a bit of a portfolio, like I kind of really need to get that going again. So I think I'll start with student films and then sort of see how that goes from there. But it's just also like learning, learning logic, learning a new program, and like I suppose this all takes a lot of time. But yeah, I'm definitely committed to it. But it's just something that I'm going to have to do, on the side, I think, until I get my bearings with it.
So film music. So you're not interested in the more like actual filmmaking element, just the music
Um,
component.
I'm quite interested in narrative, but at the moment, like I would be, I suppose, yeah, just making the music and not doing the actual work. Yeah, like I haven't studied like the filmmaking component of it. Like I can do a little bit of stuff I've done with video, but I think I've just got to the point in my life where I've just had to make like some decisions, because I tried to always do everything at once, like because I'm a writer as well, and I was like, do I keep pursuing this or what do I do here? And now it's like, no, it's just going to be music, because otherwise I feel like I'll never get anywhere. So yeah.
I understand that. What are you doing with writing?
Yeah, so I was an arts journalist for like on and off 10 years. So I just kind of stopped doing that. Last year I was working in a part-time job where it was just insane. And, there's not much money in the arts. So I think that's probably like a universal thing. And so I'm still doing sort of writing, but probably more like a bit more commercial, like corporate stuff at the moment. Even though I love the arts, I think like because I care about it so much, I put so much effort into that, and then there's really not much mental space left over for anything else. So, but yeah, like definitely that's what the background has been. So, yeah.
Yeah, I was a music journalist for the um, alt weekly here, The Stranger, for like 10 years. And then, yeah, the last few years I did that. I also was like a corporate writer, so I understand how that goes. Um, but which publication did you say you were writing for?
Oh, so I was writing for like I was a staff writer on a publication here called Arts Hub, which is like a I suppose like a national arts journal, and I was like a feature writer. So just basically interviewing a whole different bunch of artists about their process. Before that, I was editor of a gay and lesbian website in Sydney. So, and again, like talking to artists and that sort of thing. So it's always been that sort of thing. I have not really been so motivated to try to, like, I suppose, pitch to magazines. Like, I'm the kind of person that, I'm in the job, I do the writing, and then that's it. Like, I think always having done it as a day job, and a lot of the time as a full-time job as well. Yeah, I suppose not really wanting to kind of pursue that too much outside of working life. So I kind of have just stuck to publications where I've had jobs. But used to do a lot of music journalism for local street press papers going back a long time. So that was a good way to sort of get into it. But now I'm kind of like, yeah, getting a bit sick of it. So, but yeah,
It's easy to get burnt out. Not a lot of
totally.
reward and a lot of work to do. Um,
Exactly.
yeah, I understand that. But uh, do you have like archives online if you're writing and whatnot for these places?
Well, funnily enough, like some of the websites ended up going broke, so they shut down completely. So there's no like, I guess, like way to kind of look at them. But like Arts Hub, the journal that I was writing for, there's quite a lot of stuff there, but that's like a member-based website. So a lot of people, they have a jobs bulletin as well, which is why a lot of people join up to look for various jobs in the arts. So you do have to be a member, but there's some articles on there that I think like was perhaps more sponsored content or something like that, where you can kind of like read about it or whatever. But yeah, sometimes it's been hard for trying to get new jobs because obviously they want to see samples of work, and a lot of these websites are member based, or like one went broke or something like that. So that's been like, it's been pretty funny. But
Gotta get your screenshots on. I
yeah.
used to clip out like all of my blurbs from the strangers, so I just have like a box of little cutouts. Um, but was this stuff like digital then?
It's all digital. Like I've got some print stuff. Like, I mean, I do have links and bits and pieces, and I had a writing website for a while, but I suppose I just need to get that up and going again to get more freelance work. But to be honest, like I've just really put everything into music. So that has kind of all just been put on the back burner. And it's really only now that I don't want an office job at all anymore. And, COVID has obviously aided in that. Just wanting to do a lot more freelance stuff that I'm having to kind of like really get that all together. And sometimes it feels like a bit of a pain because all I want to do is music, but obviously I have to be able to eat. So yeah, need to kind of like get that going as well. But
For sure, the Great Resignation. No one wants the office jobs. Um,
horrible.
so, all right, let's talk about conversion therapy a little bit. How long did it take you to make it?
Yeah, so it was on quite a tight deadline. So was lucky to get a little bit of funding for that. That kind of just sort of was an opportunity that came out of nowhere. And so I had the idea for the EP already, but I only had 3 months to make it. And the first track, well, before that opportunity came along, I was working with Black Dahlia. So I wrote a track with her, and that took maybe like 2 or 3 months to get together. And then the actual EP, I had to make it in 3 months. So I suppose because my last EP took, 2 years, I didn't even know like if I was going to be able to work that quickly. So I just kind of, I suppose, allocated myself, a month a track. So I did end up being able to complete it in 3 months, but it was quite like an insane time. But yeah, all up, like if I add up that other track as well, like maybe like 5 months or something. So
So it took you 2 years to make Corporate Punishment. And is that because it was just like your first release and you were kind of like getting your footing with things still?
I think it was that, and definitely like I've just realized the importance of having a deadline. Like I had no deadline with that. I mean, I kept refining stuff, and like I was just sort of learning. So I would like ask people as I went along and like get some feedback and that sort of thing. And but not having a deadline is just, I mean, now I just simply have to have a deadline with something. Otherwise, I don't even know if I'll finish it. So I think that's really just taught me how important it is. And I think also that you can do things in minimal time, even if you think you can't, if you've got that deadline. Like I'm someone that if I say that I'm going to do something, I'll do it, and really feel the need to be accountable. So yeah, I think that was, and because there was a little bit of funding to do with it as well, like I really just had to finish it in that time. So
Yeah, definitely deadlines can help inspire some action. All right. What is your favorite track from the EP?
oh, I don't know. They're all like, I guess they're all special in different ways. At the moment, like I probably do really like Shock of the New, but also probably Teenage Kicks because that was the hardest one to make. So I suppose we're looking at them from different perspectives. One from perhaps a listening perspective and the other one from a technical perspective. And, yeah, why that was important to me was because I know what I had to go through to get that particular sound. So I guess that's kind of two answers to your question. But
What is the EP about and what inspired the theme?
yeah, so it's definitely like sexuality and coming out. I mean, I did like one interview for this EP, and the woman straight away was like, "Have you undergone any type of conversion therapy?" And I was like, "Oh my god, no, that would be horrible." And that's not why I called it that. I suppose I called it that. I mean, there's a little bit of like a shock kind of, I suppose, like title for people to maybe think a little bit deeper about what that could be. But from my perspective, it was more about like a conversion in the sense of like, who society and perhaps like family and friends expect you perhaps to be, moving into like a conversion through to actually who you actually are, and that being the process of coming out and moving into a space where you feel comfortable. So for me, it was that kind of conversion, not the kind of like conversion where, you're going to a church and they're trying to like get you to change your sexuality. So I suppose it's like, yeah, just kind of like a metamorphosis, in a sense, of feeling comfortable with who you actually are, and the process that you move through to get to that point.
So it's not meant as like a direct criticism towards that method, or
Well, obviously, like it's, horrible method and yeah, awful. But no, I suppose I like to look at words in different ways, and I thought, look, it could have that meaning. Like if people look at the EP, they would probably think straight away by like thinking about that title. Oh wow, that's something to do with sexuality. And then obviously, like, reading my bio and reading a little bit more, they would probably come to understand that it's not about that. But yeah, it's maybe a way to draw people in as well. And I suppose because, I do work as a journalist, like it's a little bit of if you want to call it like a clickbaity kind of thing. So yeah, it's definitely nothing to do with that though. Like I just think, yeah, it's just like so awful, the whole thing. But yeah.
okay. Yeah, I'd say it definitely attracts some attention and makes you wonder what it's about. Um, okay. Let's, do you want to talk a little bit about what your technical setup is like?
Um, it's kind of like a bit ad hoc. Like I suppose at the moment, like I have like a one bedroom apartment. It's quite small. So I just really like have a whole bunch of synths that I plug in when I need to use them. And I suppose just record that like into Ableton. And, sometimes I work with soft synths as well, but I'm definitely not the type of producer that has everything plugged in and does a big jam session and then, you know, um, edits the track together after that. It's very much like record a bit here, record a bit there, like kind of glue it together. It's just, yeah. And in terms of like, it's just like a desk with, a synth plonked on there. It's no sort of like amazing studio setup. It's just a lot of it is to do with space, I think, as well. And just not really having the right kind of space to sort of set it up how I would want to. But I mean, it does the job, so can't complain about that.
Yeah, I'd say it does the job because it sounds great. So, we're going to talk a little bit about the album, or the EP, I should say, Conversion Therapy, here in a few minutes. We're going to go through each track and have Brixx tell us a little bit about each one. We're also going to watch the video for Double Axe, which is really good. I played it a few times on my music video shows here before. And we're also at the end of the show going to premiere a brand new track from Brixx called Trigger Identification. And when do you plan to release this track, Brixx?
Yeah, so that's coming out on a compilation through MESS, which is Melbourne Electronic Sound Studio, where I was doing a little bit of studying last year. So I think they'll probably release it in the next like 2 months. But I think it's coming out on their SoundCloud, so I think all of the people that contributed can put it on their Bandcamp or something. So yeah, it'll definitely be out like within the next month or two, I'd say. Yeah.
Nice. Looking forward to that. Um, so I just have a few more questions for you, and then we're going to go into the listening part of the evening. So, what is the hardest part of releasing music or performing it for you?
The hardest part of releasing, I'd say, would definitely be the perfectionism and getting it to a point where, you know, you just sort of start to put stuff out there without like, second guessing things or thinking that you have to have it at this ridiculous standard that you hold yourself to, whereas it's probably good enough as it is. Like that is that can be a barrier for me sometimes. Sorry, the second part of your question was to do with performance, I think.
Yeah, just like what is the hardest part of the performance element?
I think, well, because I haven't really done that much performance with this particular project, but I've started to like kind of work my way towards doing it. I think it's just figuring out how to do it in a way where you're still having fun with it, but you're not getting too bogged down with the technical elements. So I guess I was working towards it in a way where I was like putting together stuff in Ableton, but like stripping out the main parts and then wanting to play that, say, on a Virus synth, which is what I'm using at the moment. And then perhaps like triggering things on a Roland, like SPD drum machine, but then thinking this is all going to be much too technical. How can I like still have fun and do it and still be engaged somewhat with the audience without just kind of having my head stuck on like, in a computer and like on a synth. So it's kind of trying to get that balance right, I think, which has potentially also been a bit of a barrier in moving forward because it's just trying to figure all that out, which takes time. And, you need a rehearsal space and all that because of COVID, a lot of stuff was shut. So, yeah, I'd say that's the challenges at the moment. But
Okay, and yeah, there are a lot of challenges with live performances right now for sure. Do you have any upcoming shows? Oh, we already talked about this. There was one that might happen, but nothing currently like announced or anything.
I think one's being announced next week. It's at a place called Colour Club, and it's another like Melbourne. I guess they're sort of like a dark wave performer, like Quell, who's quite good. They're performing, and then I think a band, and then I'm DJing with someone else. So that should be quite fun.
Cool. Um, so where did the name Bricks come from?
Yeah, so it's not like a hugely like complicated thing that I've come up with. So it's my surname. So my surname is Bricks, but it's only with one X. So I just threw another X on top. So
I think I saw there was like another producer, maybe at least another producer going by the name. Has that been an issue for you?
no, I think the people that I've seen so far that have been using that name are like hip hop producers. So it doesn't come into my realm. So that's fine.
Yeah, probably not a lot of confusion there. Hopefully not. Um, okay. Have you, let's see. Yeah, I have just a couple more here. Just a few, and then we'll go into the listening part. Do you feel like this genre of music is unfriendly towards women producers and DJs?
I wouldn't say that it's specific to a particular genre. I think overall, like women have had a harder time, sort of coming up because there's, been there's just a lot of male producers, and I think sometimes it's hard for women. I don't know. In my experience, no. Like, I mean, I've sort of like had quite a lot of support, even locally, and I mean, I guess it is sort of hard to speak to that because I haven't done a lot internationally or like have a massive career in this. So at the moment, I would say no. But I think generally speaking, for women, like it's difficult in general. I don't know if I would pin that on a specific genre of music though.
Would you say that this type of music is harder for women to get into, or that there are like added barriers to it? versus other genres?
Like just in general or from a production perspective? No, not necessarily. I think the problems that exist are widespread. I don't know if it's like darker dance music would be more difficult. Like I think if people want to make it, they should just go ahead and make it. But there might be other issues that I'm not aware of. But no, I don't think specific to this genre. No.
Okay, we have a question from chat. Do you feel that there's like you're part of a scene in Australia there for this sort of thing, or does it feel like a bit more isolated?
It definitely feels more isolated. Like I feel like I have a lot more connections that I've made online overseas. But I think through doing this, my most recent release, like I was sort of, like sponsored by the Melbourne City Council along with 39 other artists who are part of this project, and that's actually really helped in just connecting me locally a lot more. Because prior to this, I suppose I was just writing a lot of music and not really going out that much and not being that involved in the scene. And through this record, I've really had a lot of support and been quite lucky and, gotten offered DJ gigs and live gigs and that sort of thing, and have met a lot more people as a result of this particular project. So I feel like, yeah, I've been quite lucky with that. And yeah, it's much better than it was because before I didn't have so much of a connection. So.
Do you have any other releases or plans in the works?
Yeah, I have a third EP that I'm working on. I can't really say who that's coming out through or anything at the moment, but it'll be quite different, like probably quite cinematic, like still electronic and there'll still be some dance tracks on there, but definitely want to try out like a few new things. So yeah, hopefully like we'll finish that in the next year or so.
Nice. Okay, so we're going to talk a little bit about the conversion therapy EP now and listen to the tracks. So, the most recent release, Conversion Therapy, came out on vinyl through Heavy Machinery Records in October 2021. Conversion Therapy is inspired by the gamut of emotions and subsequent journey leading up to and following the coming out process. The EP draws on the artist love of David Lynch, cult queer cinema classics, and film composers such as Heather's David Newman. Sorry I already read this, but I'm reading it again. It's a mental trip encompassing repressed desire, frivolity, transformation, and ultimately acceptance. A late night soundtrack which drops you into a world tinged with darkness that encompasses techno, newbie, EBM, and breaks. And we're also going to talk about the video for Double Axe when it comes up in the track order. And after that, we're going to listen to the brand new track, Trigger Identification, which is coming out on Mess, Melbourne Electronic Sound Studio in 2022. That's this year. Okay, so we're going to get into this first track, which is called Shock of the New.
So I suppose I just kind of wanted to, I suppose, take listeners on a bit of a journey. So it was sort of a lot to do with Mulholland Drive and the two characters from that film, and I suppose their first kind of like sexual encounter. So the dialogue that you hear at the beginning of the track is kind of like influenced by some of the dialogue in that film. And I actually recorded that with a friend of mine in my stairwell, and it was quite crazy because there was like all this construction going on next door, and so I was doing that. And then it sort of starts with that, and then I guess you've got like this chain that kind of is rattling at the beginning, and that kind of can be interpreted in like a few different ways. But I guess it's also interesting because for those who have seen that film, when the two women, like they go to that club, I think it's called Club Silencio, and there's like a sort of an opera performer singing there at the time. I guess I kind of thought of it a little bit from the perspective, if we take them out of that environment and put them in like a Balkan environment, like in Berlin, like that club. So it's kind of like this new sexual experience, but maybe taking place in this kind of like cavernous sort of like techno club or something like that. So I guess that was kind of my sort of line of thinking, like when I went in to make it. And you've kind of got like this really sort of heavy saturated kick and this bass line, and then this kind of like propulsion that moves it forwards. Also like a real droney sort of effect, which I think is kind of really meant to make people feel a little bit uncomfortable. Yeah, so that's sort of when I was thinking about it, when I made it. And I guess the bass line, there was quite a lot of delays and effects that I sort of had to put on that. So that probably took the most amount of time getting that right. But yeah, it was a lot of fun to make. So
Yeah, we're definitely starting out on that eerie cinematic note. I guess I'm kind of surprised that it begins on such like an up-tempo pace. I mean this whole album is like more dance oriented, right? At
yep.
least like and the slow like new beat oriented sense of things. But yeah, I mean I think this EP is like one of the few like new beat releases that I would say. I mean, obviously it's not like 100% new beat, but that's not really a thing anyway, because that's like a fusion genre that can be lots of different things. But
True.
yeah, I'd say there's not a lot of newer music that's coming out of that like really captures that spirit. So this does it for me, which excites me as a new beat nerd. Was that like part of your intention, or do you think it was more geared towards like, cinematic, like 80s soundtracks and maybe like electro or something else?
No, I think my intention was always just to sort of create a bunch of tracks, like perhaps like across genres. So I guess each track I wanted it to have a different feel. I think my biggest concern is sort of being an artist that like pigeonholes myself into one genre, or like that sounds quite similar. So I think with this one there was like quite an effort to sort of make each track sound like a different genre that I quite liked. So like new beat, techno, electro. So yeah, hopefully that's kind of what it sounds like. But yeah, I just like to make stuff that sounds different. Otherwise I feel like I just don't want to get put into this like one sort of box. So
Well, I appreciate that. Definitely having listened to plenty of releases that like sound basically the same song from start to finish, slight variations of the same song. Um, do you have anything else you want to tell us about this track, Shock of the New?
um, yeah, I mean, I suppose it's just about like sort of embracing new experiences, and how that can kind of be quite like daunting at first, but then can also be quite fun. So I suppose I was just trying to sort of like take the listener on like a kind of trajectory of that kind of line of thinking, and that's certainly what I was thinking about when I was making it. But yeah, apart from that, was just that's probably about it, I think, for that track.
Okay, cool. We are going to watch the video now for Double Axe. Okay, so that was the video for Double Act. The music video for Double Axe reflects the era in 1980s technology that utilized VHS tracking and pixelated computer screens, a time when technological anxiety ensued just before the advent of the internet. In collaboration with Brixx on the video, Akers of the synth duo Forces says, Double Act is a very driving track and very propulsive, but it's also very open and induced a sense of floating. So I wanted to convey that visually. With references to Max Headroom and 1980s body horror movies such as Society, the video further emphasizes Brixx's fascination with technology on the cusp of the internet age. Okay, so that is the video from Double Axe. And so, do you want to tell us a little bit about the video and the track?
Yeah, so the video came about in an interesting way, I think, because I had always been a fan of Alex's and Force's in particular, and then it just sort of came about that I got to work with him for this project. And I suppose like I had one conversation with him on the phone, and that was it. And we spoke for quite a while, and I just explained to him the themes, of the EP, and I just sort of said, look, I just like I've gone through this kind of process, this journey, over my whole life, and we just sort of spoke about how he could kind of convey that. And he was working a lot with sort of like 3D rendering and like a lot of stuff that I don't even know how he does it, or like what he kind of does with it, because I'd not seen any of his previous work, but just I guess trusting him and being so enamored with his music and also his vision. And he's just like, he's a genius in many ways and someone that I really respect. I just sort of said, look, you're your own artist in your own right. Just do what you think is going to suit. And as long as it kind of has a few themes running through it, like, because I was growing up in the 80s and just like I'm quite 80s obsessed, and especially with like geometric shapes and just a particular, like, when I used to watch ads in the 80s and the look and feel and Max Headroom and all that sort of thing, I said, like, can it embody some of that and look like that, but also just do what you think will suit? So yeah, he went away and did his thing, and pretty much just came up with it. And I said, like, I love it. And yeah, the process was really like very easy to work with him. Like he gave me updates, like, every month or two. And then he'd go away and, he did all this crazy stuff to it. Now I'm not probably going to remember, but just like, I think he had Japanese security cameras and was like re-recording things through that and then painting some sort of weird thing, and probably not going to do it justice to his process. But all I know is that whatever he did was like extremely complicated, and I didn't need to know how he did it, only like that it looked good, because I couldn't even get my head around half of it. So yeah, that was the music video. And do you want me to talk a bit about the track, or?
Yeah, how did you get into collaboration with Alex from Forces? How did that start?
Yeah, so the people that were running the record project that I was involved in was like a whole thing called Flash Forward, and the people that were running that actually knew him. So it was quite bizarre because I became connected to all these people that were living sort of locally. I mean, he's in Perth, so in a completely different state, but they knew him, and there was talk at the very beginning that he might be able to make a music video, and then I just always kind of hung on to that. And then when it came to that time, I said, can he still do it? Will he be able to do it? I'd really like to work with him. And because they knew him, like the head of the project was friends with him, it just came about that way. So yeah, it was really crazy to me because I'd always sort of wanted to like meet him or interact with him, and then all of a sudden it was just kind of not handed to me, but it was just the option just presented itself. So I suppose it was just sort of meant to be.
Has this person directed other music videos? If so, I would like to see them.
He did. I think he did quite a lot for Sally Dr. Do you know her? Yeah,
Yeah,
he's
yeah, I
done.
remember those being good.
Yeah, and he did. There's another like band on the this project that I'm involved in, this Flash Forward project called Laughing Gear, and he did some of theirs. But I think he's done. I think he's done quite a lot of stuff. But I think this is like his first sort of maybe foray into sort of more like the 3D modeling kind of stuff. I think the other videos were maybe just kind of like regular music videos, perhaps, and this is sort of, yeah, he's taking it in a different direction now. I assume. I think maybe. But.
Yeah, so if you want to tell us a bit about the track itself.
Yeah, so the yeah, so it was interesting. I don't know how I started with it, but all I know is that I found this like crazy newsreel on YouTube called like the Gay 80s or Welcome to the Gay 80s or something, and it was exploring gay and lesbian people that were living in San Francisco at the time and their lifestyles. And now looking back on it, like you just laugh, it's ridiculous because it just sort of seems so outlandish the way that they were portraying these people. But at the time, like, I think there was a real curiosity from the news readers and the news anchors and the journalists to be able to sort of unpick why people wanted to be in same-sex relationships, but they were really doing it in this way that was kind of like, why do you feel that you need to be with a man? And like really quite actually insulting now to look at, but it was quite ridiculous. So it was this whole hour of this news broadcast. So I just picked out bits and pieces of that and kind of like thought, oh, I'll use that as the basis for the sampling within the track. So, there's a part where they're talking about like heterosexual people. So I kind of cut that up. So I think it says like het set or something. And like that's kind of studded together. And then there's like, a part where they're talking about San Francisco. And then there's this song in the back that mentions San Francisco. So I kind of took that and placed that in there. So I suppose it was just kind of like exploring, what was going on at that time through this kind of sampling, through this weird like kind of news report. So that's kind of how I started with it. And then after that, I suppose I like played bits and pieces on the virus because I'm using a virus at the moment. And and I think I had like a Kawaii drum pack because I don't have that drum machine, unfortunately. So it was kind of like splicing samples together for the drums and putting it together that way. And yeah, it took a while because I think I had sort of two bass lines. So there was like the beginning bass line, and then during the middle of the track, it goes into this other bass line. And I think I'd recorded something else earlier down the track and wanted to use that but didn't know how. So kind of like cut that up and then placed that in the second half of the song. And so yeah, it's weird. Sometimes I feel like I produce in this strange way. It's kind of like it's like doing a giant jigsaw puzzle. Maybe it's not the easiest way to make music, but that's just how that particular track came together. So yeah.
How long did this whole process take, like with the video?
Yeah, well, the video, I mean, there's the other component that I haven't even spoken about was the design of the EP. That probably took the longest because as part of this whole program, like I was paired with Alex and then also a visual artist. And so he does a lot of like sort of graffiti and murals and stuff as well. And so the whole thing with the video, probably 6 months of like pretty much consistent work. The video was maybe 3 or 4 months back and forth, and the design of the EP was probably similar time. So yeah, it was kind of coordinating all these different projects with people, which was quite interesting for me because prior to this, like I'm just used to working on my own. So it was really nice to be able to work with like an illustrator and and a video director and that kind of thing. Just to be able to like share the process with other people and like have them, I suppose, have their ideas in it as well, rather than it just be this release that I put out and it's all my music and no other influence from anyone else. So I thought that was quite a nice way to work.
So those samples, let's say San Francisco, they're from that YouTube video.
Mm.
Nice. I'd been wondering where those were from actually, but I think it works really well. I've used that track as some of like my intros on some of my streams.
Oh, cool.
Um, it has like a definite cinematic feel to it and definitely a strong nostalgic 80s vibe. All right. So we're going to listen to the next track, which is called Teenage Kicks. Okay, so we have the third track from this EP, Conversion Therapy, which is called Teenage Kicks. And we're here with Brixx, the producer. Do you just want to tell us a little bit about the track?
Yeah, cool. So I think I named it after. So there's actually an Australian film called Teenage Kicks, which none of the samples are from that film, but it's like sort of a, I guess, like a queer coming of age story between two teenage boys. So I probably first saw that maybe, I think it's a few years old now, but it's quite an intense film. So I don't know, for some reason I just wanted to name it that. And the actual samples, like, yeah, I don't know if I should say what film it's from because I don't want to be sued. But it's a, you'd probably be able to find it. It's like it is a coming of age film, like about conversion therapy, and Natasha Lyonne is in it, so that probably gives it away. But I kind of like, it's quite, it's a comedy, so it's quite like some of the dialogue is like quite funny and ridiculous, and I think I just wanted the whole vibe to kind of be about like, you know, frivolity and growing up and sort of having these like fun experiences and not have it be too heavy. But I think yeah, I was sort of mentioning earlier, like it was probably the most technical track to produce because like I started with like a probably like a breakbeat sort of like percussive section, but then I wanted all these kind of like incidental drum hits. So to be able to do that, like I had to kind of play that live through a drum sampler. So it was kind of like going through the whole track and then actually like physically playing in bits and pieces, because I think, you know, you get to a point where if you're just kind of like penciling in drum rhythms, it's just not very organic. And I think, yeah, although this was technical, like I think it worked, and I kind of wanted it to have that sort of 80s feel, maybe a little bit like, you know, some of the cinematic stuff I was talking about earlier that I like. You know, there's quite a lot of movement in terms of percussion and the way that, you know, things kind of, I guess, are glued together. And yeah, through going through that process, I think it kind of made me realize how important it is to be able to play in things organically. So I think I'll probably do a lot more of that moving forward, just because I think it gives it a total different feel. But yeah, like in the breakdown section, there's like a sample that's something about like she drove me on the back of her Harley, which I thought was like just like such a like a dykey thing to say in such a great way, like just so funny and just kind of ridiculous. And I think with some of my tracks, like especially probably more the first EP, there's like quite a lot of nonsense element to it where some of the things are inaudible and like bits and pieces are mashed up, and like I kind of wanted that to come through in this track as well. So yeah, it was a lot of fun to make, but it probably took the longest in terms of like just dedicating quite a lot of time to get the percussive elements right. So yeah.
Well, I'm glad that you took the time. It's interesting for me to hear about like the different processes people have, and you know, just how much goes into each little bit of the song. You know, some people wouldn't really think about it. They just hear the complete polished, shiny product, you know?
Yeah, I mean, I think
But
there's some things, sorry, like that you, I don't know, that you listen to, and with particularly things that I listen to, sometimes I think, oh, it sounds, it doesn't sound simplistic like with other people's work, because I know that it's not, but it just comes together in a way that's so cohesive. But you know, like well, I know what's gone into it, so I just have such an appreciation. Basically, anyone that makes electronic music, whether it's the kind of genre that I like or not, like I just have so much appreciation, because for me, it's definitely not something that comes easy to me at all. So yeah, I really like listening to other people's stuff too, and just sort of listening to how they may have put it together.
all right, so we're going to listen to the last track from this EP called Metamorphosis, which features Black Dahlia, another Australian EBM producer who was joining us in the chat at least a little bit ago. I'm not sure if Black Dahlia is still out there. Hello. So, but after that, we are going to premiere the brand new track, Trigger Identification. So don't go anywhere. All right, we're going to listen to this next one, Metamorphosis.
well. I suppose I met Black Dahlia. We started chatting online during I think it was like the first lockdown. There's been so many now, I can't remember. But we were just chatting for a while, and then we would send each other these voice messages all the time, and I got to know her quite well. And yeah, then I just asked her if she wanted to collaborate, and then this project came up, and I explained to her a little bit what it was about, and just said, like, do you think you'd be able to write some lyrics that kind of reflect, going through like a transition in life, and and how you would kind of relate to that in your own way, and just kind of let her come up with something. And yeah, and what she came up with just really seemed to suit what it was that I was doing. So I think I started by sending her a bass line that I made on like a Korg Micro X, an old Korg Micro X that I had, that I synced up to. It's like was it like some sort of a sequencer? I think, like, I can't even remember now what I've got. It's here somewhere. It's, yeah, SQ1 sequencer. So I'd not really done that before because I wanted to try to get this sort of EBM-ish bass line. So it was a bit hit and miss till I got it. And then I just kind of sent her that, and she sent some vocals back on the top of it, which sounded really good. And then a lot of the track was actually trying to nail the percussive elements again into place. I feel like it's always the percussion that takes the longest. So I had a particular delay that I was using. So I would delay certain beats on particular notes and accent them. That took a very long time to do. And then after that, it was just kind of trying to mix her vocals and get that right to a place where we were both happy with it. Because I'd not really worked with a vocalist before. So I just kind of had to figure out how we wanted it to sound and how I could go about doing that. So we both kind of wanted it to sound quite ethereal. So I think I had like a cathedral reverb delay or something on that. And then also it was like a ping pong delay. So kind of getting her voice to really travel. So yeah, I wanted that to be the last track because I think a lot of the, a lot of the EP, it's kind of like darkness and light. And this kind of track is moving more towards like a sort of hopefulness. So that's why that was the last track. Although ironically it was the first track that I wrote, but it kind of like seemed to move into place to like kind of connect so that it was the last track. But yeah, it was such a great experience working with her, and it just made me realize that I really want to work with more vocalists because I'm not someone that sings myself. I mean, maybe someday I'll do spoken word or something like that, but I think it's becoming more and more challenging to, complete 4 or 5 minute tracks without vocals because you're constantly having to think of ways to make the track interesting. And you can do that through sampling, but I kind of feel like I've already done quite a lot of sampling and, would like to kind of move forward and try different things. So I think a way to do that is to work with vocalists, but it's just finding, the right ones that you already have some sort of a relationship with so that the track works. Yeah.
So was Black Dahlia's role mainly to do vocals with that one?
Yeah, it was mainly the vocals. Like, she wrote them and came up with it, and I produced, the rest of the track.
Do you do your own vocals on any of the tracks, or are you mostly just doing vocal samples from like
It's
films
mainly
and
just,
things?
yeah, it's mainly just samples. I think I will start to do them, but it's just figuring out, I guess it's just finding your voice yet again in another way, like, on your own music, like how would that fit in? Like, what do I kind of want to say? How am I going to do that? Like, that's a whole new thing for me. I mean, even though, like, I'm a journalist, like this kind of writing and like writing lyrics and that kind of thing, I don't really know like how easy or hard that's going to be for me, but I just feel like, yeah, moving forward, I think I'm going to have to do something like that. Otherwise, I'm probably going to get quite bored. And I would like to obviously work with other people, but as I said, it's just finding the right voices that suit as well. So I'll have to see what happens there. But yeah.
So what would you say your favorite samples that you used are, or and just in general, maybe that you haven't used, but what are your favorite samples? Sort of an
Oh, from
obscure
this
question.
from
Not
this
even
EP or
necessarily
across.
for this EP. I mean, you could tell us from this EP too, but I'm just curious, like in general, like what are if you have favorite samples?
Yeah, so the
Maybe you
best
don't.
one, the best one was so my first EP. There's a track called Mansplainer, and that's from Corporate Punishment, which was very much about like patriarchal workplace structures and just like different bosses that I'd had in the past, and just the way that they were ordering particular, staff members around and that kind of thing. And so I found this. I don't even know where I got it from now, but it's this particular sample of a man talking in German about using this particular urinal, and like it's like one of those electronic ones, so that you step into the thing and then like the door will shut after a certain amount of time. And so it's kind of funny because like he's explaining how to do something, so it's a literal explanation of something, but it's just so ridiculous that I just like completely cut that up so that it sounds like nonsense. I mean, to me it means something because it's under the context of this whole EP, it was like meaning about control and that kind of thing. But it was just so ridiculous and so nonsensical in a way that it was just, it was a lot of fun because it was just so stupid. So
That's good. Anything else like maybe that is like more known, like a film sample or something? Like one of the big ones that get used a lot, or like not necessarily something in your own work, just like a sample you enjoy.
like something that I really like. Yeah. So there's I can't think of the name of the track now. So it's a Kendall track. So it's that, it's like an Otello track. It uses Blade Runner. It's like I can't really think of what the track's called now, but it's something like, it's got some line about like lesbian and this, like some sort of thing. It's like, you'll know it as soon as you hear it. It's from Blade Runner. And it's just the way that has been woven into that track. Is just amazing. And I actually like reached out to him. I think I was asking at the time about, like, I just wanted to know, I just wanted to know how other people, like if they were getting clearance and that kind of thing. And like, I think most people just use stuff, from tracks and just rip it straight from it. And I think I always have this thing in my mind where, there's that slight thing that you could get sued or whatever. So I'm just like always trying to be conscious about that. And I think that's also a reason why I want to do my own vocals, because it's getting to a point where it's like, well, how many more EPs will I make before like something goes wrong? Like, not to jinx anything, but so that's kind of in the back of my mind. But like a lot of old new beat stuff as well. Like the names escape me now, but I also really like oh god, now I can't even think of the name that they're called. Another Australian EBM duo, I forget. Anyway, there's too many to mention, but like there's heaps out there. So
Love a good Blade Runner sample. They're just like ubiquitous also, so there's some sort of like power in that, like just that everyone will know what it is and where it's from,
yeah,
Perhaps add some sort of nostalgic element or something. I don't know. But Blade Runner is one that I just like, you can just sample it over and over again and I'm totally fine with it. Like all right, so we are going to listen now to the track premiere of the night, which is for Trigger Identification. And I'm just going to read a little bit about it before I play it. And then Brixx will tell us a little bit about it and when it's coming out and all of that good stuff. All right. If I can find it. All right, here we go. Trigger Identification is part of a compilation coming out on Melbourne Electronic Sound Studio in 2022. That's this year. I wrote it, this is Brixx, not me, while studying there in 2021 and used instruments from their collection, including the Roland JP 8000, Moog DFAM, and Novation Bass Station, which is just fun to say. Melbourne Electronic Sound Studio, has been pivotal to my development, this is Brixx, and evolution as an electronic musician. They have what is probably the largest collection of electronic music instruments in the Southern Hemisphere, offer classes, and put on live performances. Members can come in and use the gear to make whatever they like, and their collection is wide and varied, from vintage synths to drum machines. Okay, so we're going to listen to this track, premiering it even, Trigger Identification.
One word of caution.
Okay, so that was the first, well, sorry, that was the premiere for the night, Trigger Identification. We are here with the artist Brixx. And do you want to tell us a little bit about when that track is coming out?
I think it should probably be out within the next month. They haven't told us yet because it's part of a wider compilation of quite a few artists that were studying at Mess. So yeah, I just asked if I could have it ready for you tonight. So yeah, that you could play it first because I'm not sure if they're doing any premieres. I think they might just put it together as a compilation, and then it's up to the artists to do what they want to do with it. So I thought it was a good opportunity. Yeah, I started writing this track when I was studying at Mess. So the idea was everyone that was sort of studying in this particular course was to use like instruments from the collection and make a track. And my initial idea was sort of making something that was like, I was like watching a lot of John Carpenter at the time and wanted to kind of make something a little bit like that. Obviously this track sounds nothing like that, but that was like 3 versions ago. So I kind of rewrote it 3 times. I was never happy with it. And then it kind of morphed into this thing, which I suppose, yeah, I don't even know like what I was aiming for. Like it just ended up like this. But the main kind of pads throughout that sound a little bit like, I don't even want to say classical because it's not even what it's supposed to be, but just have this, give it this kind of other feel. So that was using this machine, the JP 8000, which I think I was initially drawn to because I think maybe Depeche Mode used it in some of their earlier productions, but it was quite like I didn't really know exactly what I was doing with it. And so each time I'd go into Mess to record with it, I'd do a little bit and then I'd go home and realize that I needed more. So I'd have to go back and retune the whole thing. So it was a bit of a, not a nightmare, but it was just like, it was quite difficult to get it right because it's not like, you know, when you've got the instrument at home, you can just fiddle around with it. You have to physically go back there and retune it again. So I was pulling my hair out by the end of it, but finally finished it in the end. So, and the samples are from, I think they're like some copyright cleared pack that I found. So I don't even know what it's from. It was like, again, complete nonsense. The main bit, there was like another section that said something about caution when using building blocks, which makes absolutely no sense. So I took that part out because I was like, I don't want it to sound like it's a song about construction. That makes no sense. But yeah, so again, like it's not a track that is, it's just sort of like a fun track. I think for my EPs, I like to have a theme and everything sort of relates to that. But this is kind of just a feeling that I kind of wanted to make it sound like a bit 80s or something. And yeah, it has this kind of nonsense in the background. So that's as far as the deeper meaning goes, I think, with this one.
You've done like a handful of tracks for other comps, right? Or just like remixes for other artists?
No, well, I've really only I've got a remix coming out for an artist in I think it's coming out maybe in about 2 months. But the only other artist that I've remixed is Not Ausgang, and he's also remixed me. But that's the only one that I've done, and having just
That's the
finished
one
the
I was thinking
second.
of.
Oh, that was that RBMK, I think it was called. That was what I did for him, and he did Mansplainer.
Yeah, I know
But
I've played your remix. I may have actually played like your remix of his track also. But yeah, that's a really good one.
yeah, I think having, I mean, as I say, I haven't done many remixes, but it's just like it still takes time, but it's definitely, it's just so much easier because like the sound palette is already there. Whereas I think is when you're creating your own stuff, it's just always like so difficult. What sound do I want to use? How am I going to manipulate that? You know, when it's already there, it's there and that's it. And yeah, and it's probably more enjoyable sometimes doing a remix, I feel. But yeah, it's probably less time consuming, I'd say.
For sure, yeah. Repurposing another person's work versus starting from scratch. It's a different game. All right. So, do you have anything else you want to share about this new track, Trigger Identification?
Um, I think just that the I because as I say, like there were 3 different versions, and the version before this had this other bass line that I like ended up hating in the end, and so I'd written this bass line that I wanted to use for my 3rd EP that I'm sort of working on, and that kind of seemed to slot into this a lot more efficiently, and that was all made on the bass station, but it took quite a lot of time to get it right because I suppose I like started with one bass line and then I affected different parts of it with different filters. So that was just like very fiddly. And although like I feel like this track in some ways it's kind of, I don't know, there's not so much going on because I kind of wanted like the bass line and that lead line to really come out, but kind of just engineering that bass line just took so much time, I think, just with the different filtering processes, which sometimes you can really get bogged down in that world. But yeah, that's probably it, I think, for that. Like,
This title, trigger identification, is that in reference to what kind of trigger is it referencing?
what was I thinking when I did it? Like, I think there were kind of like a few different versions, and now, like, to be honest with you, like, I think it was, there was at one part of the track, there was like when that man was speaking, there was a sound that kind of sounded like a gun, but then I ended up taking that out. So I think it was like identifying that a gun was about to go off, but now basically that sample's been taken away. So the whole point of it probably doesn't make any sense. But yeah, I think it was just in relation to like, you know, I mean, it could be to do with any triggers really, I suppose, in life, but I think it was more specific to this particular type of gun sound that's now mysteriously disappeared. So
Okay, so the ghost of that sample is in the title now, essentially.
totally.
All right, now we have to hear that sample repurposed elsewhere,
It'll show up somewhere, I'm sure.
maybe. All right, let's see. Let's talk about a little bit about what you have coming up again soon in terms of releases, shows, and whatnot. And then we're going to wrap things up. If anyone has any questions from the chat, feel free to chime in. We are wrapping things up though, so make it soon.
Yes, I have a show coming up on the 31st of March at a place called Colour Club where I've never played before. So that's supporting a few local bands and artists. So that'll be super fun. I have a remix coming out in 2 months. Haven't actually spoken with the producer about whether or not I'm allowed to speak about that. So maybe I should not in case I get in trouble. But I definitely will post that on my channels when that comes out. It was a really fun remix to make. Like I completely changed it up from the original. So it's like electro, which is not something that I think I've been influenced by electro, but I don't know if I would really call any of my tracks kind of proper electro. So I probably would for this one. So I'd not really made something like this before. It was a lot of fun. And then, yeah, after that, I'm just kind of keeping like a clean sort of slate so that I can just work on this new EP, which is going to require, like, I think quite a lot of research in terms of just the way that I construct things because I'm making like something that I've never really made before. So I think that's going to take time to research how to do that. And then also just want to get my head around some gear that I've got that I haven't really had time to kind of think about. So before I start anything, like there's going to be a bit of a research process. So I'm giving myself a year to write it. So hopefully it's finished by, this time next year. But I'll probably go quiet for a while and just do that, I think, because it's probably going to require like most of my concentration. So yeah, that's probably all I'll be doing, I'd say. And then I might do some live shows. Like I feel like I should at least like do, conversion therapy as a live show, which probably will happen this year at some point. But yeah.
Nice. Yeah, it seems like you put a lot of energy and work into the preparation of things. You have the process of creating something, and it seems to be producing good results. So do what you're doing.
Thanks.
All right. If there's nothing else from the chat, then we are going to wrap things up. You can catch this video on YouTube probably, honestly, in a couple weeks. I'm a little bit behind for the interviews, but it will be up there. I just posted the link in the chat if you missed it and want to catch up. And you can look out for that new track, Trigger Identification, releasing in the next couple of months on a compilation through Mess which was Melbourne Electronic Sound Studio. All right, so I'm sure you can find that through Brixx socials and whatnot. So please do give her a follow. And that album, Conversion Therapy, that we listened to today, is also available on Bandcamp. I'll post all these links again in the chat for you. But yeah, feel free to support the artists. All right. Thanks again for tuning in to my live interview series here. I'm Voxinistra, DJ based in Seattle, Washington, and I have several programs here per week on Twitch, mostly DJ sets, and now also music video shows and interviews here on Wednesdays as well with up and coming dark electronic producers. So I hope you'll join me again here. Make sure to hit the follow button and even hit the bell notification thing if you want to actually find out when I go live. All right. Thanks again for tuning in. We're going to raid to another great music channel here. A big thanks again to Brixx for joining us today.
Thank you.